I literally just sat down to film, and the kid's about to start crying. Wait for it. That was uncut. I'll be back. Well, this is how it's gonna be, because she wants to cuddle, and I really don't mind. Today's video topic is my food allergies, sensitivities, intolerances, triggers, whatever you want to call it. It's a list of the main foods that I can't eat. They're not like main allergens, so I'm also going to let you know how I figured out that they were a problem. Bless you. Bless you. Bless you. According to WebMD, 8 things cause 90% of food allergy reactions. And those 8 things are milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, soy, wheat, fish, and shellfish. Yeah, you can only have milk. So when I first started showing signs of having any food allergies, we anticipated it would be one of those 8 things. I'm going to let you know right now that the main things I can't have are certain types of beers, mostly IPAs, but it seems to be tied to a certain type of hop. Sorry, she's wiggling. The biggest thing that I aim to avoid is milk fat, but I do have a lot of fat-free dairy. The other secondary thing that I try to avoid the most is soybean oil, and I absolutely don't have white wine or Prosecco because, ow. Now, what's interesting about my allergies is even though I can't have milk fat, I can have skim milk. I can have milk protein. I can have lactose. It's just the milk fat. Oh no, don't cry. Please don't cry in my video. And even though I can't have soybean oil, I can tolerate little bits of soy sauce, and I can have soy lecithin, the emulsifier. You can probably imagine if I had started from scratch and tried to do an elimination diet to figure out what my allergies were, I would have a really difficult time because the things that you try to avoid are not typically those things. And in practice, that's actually exactly what happened. I sort of tried doing elimination diets, things that were recommended by my doctor, and then things that I found online, and nothing was working. Until finally I found this allergy test. So that's what ended up giving me my answers. But I'll let you know a little bit more about the winding path to get there before I tell you everything about that. Hi, Happy. Oh, look at that smile. Hi, Smiles. I want to say it was probably about a year or two after my chronic migraine symptom onset that I started getting these weird spikes only after certain meals. When I say spike, what I mean is I looked pregnant. Literally pregnant. And now that I've actually been pregnant, I'd say probably like beginning of the 3rd trimester pregnant. My stomach would blow really badly, and depending how much I had, I could sometimes also get the runs. It was very crampy and gassy and uncomfortable, and I think everybody has had that like gurgly feeling in their stomach, but I was getting it really randomly and really severely, and I had to run to the bathroom in a hurry and all of that ugly stuff. So it wasn't just that it was a really inconvenient reaction to have that was uncomfortable for me. It was like I couldn't get on with my normal life. I couldn't be in the lab in all of my PPE and rush to the bathroom in time if I had to. Don't worry, I didn't have any accidents or anything, but it really is just not something that I could deal with anymore. So I went to my doctor. I told her something's off in my body, and also after certain meals, I get these really big spikes. And so she ran some blood tests. She couldn't do a blood test for the allergies. I don't remember why. I tried to look back in my notes from the time, and I couldn't find a reason why. But the blood test showed that I had a B12 deficiency, so I started supplementing that. I supplement that to this day, and it's still at normal levels. But in addition to that, she told me to start on the low FODMAP diet. FODMAP is a complicated acronym that stands for a bunch of sugars. It's something like fermentable, oligo, monosaccharides, and polyols, or something like that. I should look it up. I have my laptop here. Let me look it up. FODMAP. I don't know why I'm talking without doing research first. FODMAPs are fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. Nailed it! It's short-chain carbohydrates that are poorly absorbed in the small intestine and are prone to absorb water and ferment in the colon. Meaning some people have my symptoms when they eat FODMAPs. That diet was pretty restrictive, nothing impossible. I will say that I felt good on it. My digestion felt really good on that diet. But unfortunately, it didn't do anything to stop these big spikes that were happening. What? Shh, 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 shh. Good job. Oh, I love it when you calm down by yourself like that. Shh, good job. Yeah. So that didn't really work. At the same time, since the medical system is so slow to get at anything, I decided to take matters into my own hands and get an allergy test done online. And it's one of those things that seems really scammy. Like, it seems like it's not gonna work, and the research on hair tests, if you look at the allergy test companies that do it, they're like, yeah, hair tests are great. If you look at the companies that do blood tests, they say, no, hair tests are not reliable. So I have no idea what's actually the truth, but I do know that this hair test worked for me. I will put a link to the hair test that I did down in the description box down below. They have individual, they also have couples, so I got my husband to do it with me, and they even have a 4-pack, like a family 4-pack. So we went in with another couple, and it brought our costs down a lot. Us and the other couple weren't even like in the same state. We connected long distance, and we were still able to do the package deal for this test. So that was pretty cool. Now, when I got my allergy test results, or my intolerance test results, here's what they found. Wheat flour, apricots, blackberries, broad bean, butter, prosecco, cashew nut, E380 triammonium citrate salts from citric acid, E470 sodium, potassium, and calcium salts, egg yolk, goat, oolong tea, oyster sauce, orange juice, and soya. And I know that sounds like a really long list. Yeah, and that's how I would have felt too. Oh, I know. It's a lot. However, what they tell you is that not all of the things that test positive for a reaction will actually end up being something that causes symptoms for you. Sweetie, I need to make this YouTube. So what they recommend you do is you eliminate everything that's on your list, and then you reintroduce the items one by one to see which ones you can actually tolerate. And that's a way that you can figure out what actually was causing your symptoms. One more thing I'd like to mention about these test results. They give you a percentage reaction from 85 to 100%, and they don't report anything that was a reaction below 85%. They did tell me ahead of time that the percent reaction doesn't correspond to your symptoms at all, and I have found that to be true. The one that ended up being an 85%, which is the lowest that they'll report, was soya, and that's something that I'm super symptomatic for. But something that's 100%, which for me is wheat flour, absolutely no reaction. I've never seen a difference when I cut wheat. So if you do end up doing this allergy test, know that the percentages aren't correlated to your symptoms. Now, some of the things that are on my list, I didn't need to do anything differently for because I wasn't eating them, like goat. I don't eat goat. Oyster sauce, not usual. I don't usually have orange juice because I keep my diet low sugar. Blackberries I have in moderation. Apricots I love, but I just don't eat them very much. So there were really just a couple of big things that stood out on here. First of all, Prosecco. I already mentioned way at the beginning that I do avoid Prosecco because it's a big migraine trigger for me. And I already knew that that was a trigger for me because the second I sip it, I can feel it in my temples. It's this horrible stinging pain in my temples for Prosecco, for white wine, for certain beers. So Prosecco showing up on this list was a really good sign that we were on the right track. At the time that I got the test done, I was really only interested in figuring out what was going on with this bloating that I was getting in my stomach. And that ended up being soybean. I never would have been able to figure out that allergy without this test, because when you try to eliminate anything from your diet, really, it's really easy to skip to the part on the ingredients list where it says contains milk, soy, or whatever, contains soy, wheat. But for me, that contains thing is never actually the truth for my allergies. I learned this the hard way, and I was super frustrated when I figured it out, but the contains list can say contains soy when all it has is soy lecithin, which I can have, so I would not have a reaction to that. And it can also omit the word soy if it contains soybean oil, which is a trigger for me, so that was screwing me up too. I'm really bad at knowing whether I said things in a way that makes sense, but what that means is sometimes I would get soy spiked from a food that did not have soy in the list of allergens, and sometimes I would not get soy spiked from a food that did have soy listed. And it's just because of that soybean oil, soy lecithin thing. For some reason, soy lecithin has to be marked, soybean oil does not, and I was reacting to the soybean oil. A very similar reaction with milk. I am allergic to milk fat. That is also on my list as butter. They put milk fat in parentheses, but I didn't realize that milk fat on its own could be an allergy. Usually when it's time to cut milk, you cut the protein or the lactose, the sugar. Cutting either of those didn't work for me because it was actually the fat that I was allergic to. And when I Googled whether or not milk fat could even be an allergy, it's actually highly contested. It's super controversial to have a milk fat allergy, but 10 out of 10 can confirm. I have been given foods that I've been told did not have milk fat in them, but I had a spike, I had a reaction. For me, my reaction to milk fat is vertigo, and of course there was milk fat in it. So that happened. My alcohol allergy is also a little bit weird. Most people, if they can't have beer, they just can't have beer, period. Or if they can't have wine, they can't have red wine because of the sulfates. I don't know if white wine also has sulfates, but I know a lot of people with migraine, they can't have wine because of sulfates. Once again, my allergy is weird in that I totally can have red wine. I just can't have white wine, rosé, or Prosecco, or champagne. And maybe I would have been able to figure that out from this test because this test does say Prosecco on it, but I did not have to learn it from this test because I can feel it when I take a sip of the Prosecco. I can feel it when I take a sip of the beer. I can feel it when I take a sip of the wine. One thing that's kind of interesting about the alcohol allergy is the beer one actually seemed to develop over time. I used to drink beer a lot, brew beer, all of it. I really love beer to this day. I would drink IPAs, lagers, reds, almost all of it. Not hefts, but almost everything else. And eventually I figured out that I was getting these painful migraines after I had beer. The allergy progressed to the point where I could feel it in my temple when I had a sip of only the very strongest IPAs that exist. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And that slowly morphed into, I just can't have any IPAs anymore. And what I've found is certain drinks I could have on one day but not on another day. There's this whole theory about your trigger threshold and what threshold you're at. So if I had a not very triggering day, then I might be able to get away with a beer, but if it was already a triggering day, maybe I'm gonna get a migraine from something I can usually have. And it just kept progressing like that. So I would go to a bar and they would say, hey, what kind of beer do you want? And I would say, do you have any reds? I would usually be able to have a red even when I couldn't have IPAs. Or I would say, can I have a taster? I bet you a lot of bartenders thought that I was just trying to get free tasters because I was telling them I'll get a migraine if I drink the wrong one, and I can just tell from tasting it. But guys, I was telling the truth. I could really tell from tasting it. And I was able to have a lot more beer during those 2 years or something before it progressed to the point where now I can't even have Coors Light most days. Let me go get my Huel. I had this friend at the place where I was working at the time, and he was doing this weird thing where he was living off of a meal replacement drink, and he was hoping it would help him with building muscles and stuff. So he introduced me to this stuff called Huel. I had no idea how life-changing Huel was going to be for me. Huel stands for human fuel, and it is a nutritionally complete drink that is as simple as just adding a couple of scoops of the powder into some water. Huel was my miracle in a time when I really needed one. And this is not sponsored by Huel at all. I'm literally just someone who drinks a lot of Huel and I love it, but at the time it was a total lifesaver because it is free from dairy, wheat, soy, other allergens, I don't know, some other stuff. And like I said, it's nutritionally complete. So it's everything that you need to live off of. It's a nice like whole meal for you. So at the time, I was getting really frustrated having these soy spikes and not having any idea where they were coming from. And it got to a point where I just stopped eating sometimes because I was so scared of getting spiked. The repercussions from eating were so bad that I was like, I just don't want to eat right now. And I started skipping meals, and that's not a healthy habit to have. So, introducing Huel. My friend at work, who had been drinking it as his main source of calories, he was like, why don't you try it and see if it spikes you, and if it doesn't, you can use it until you figure out what foods you can safely reintroduce. And I was like, dude, brilliant. So I started drinking just tons of Huel, and it wasn't my every single meal, but it was a lot of my meals, and I was able to slowly reintroduce other foods. And by doing that, I figured out that it was soybean oil that had been spiking me the whole time. Obviously, my love of Huel did not end there because I still have it and use it all the time. I still use Huel a lot when I have a migraine and I don't feel like I can cook, which is most of my migraines. I can have Huel as a meal replacement. That way Migraine Jen can still eat even when I'm feeling nauseous or I'm not feeling up for cooking. Because it's sort of like oatmeal in the way that it sits in your stomach. It's just a nice, gentle, filling thing in your stomach. And I personally really love the taste. They have a lot of flavors. This is totally sounding like a commercial. I'm not sponsored, really. Although, people from Huel, if you're watching, hey. The other cool thing about Huel is you can use it as a flour replacement when you bake. So if I make brownies, I actually make Huel brownies. Oops, sorry. Any recipe, like I wouldn't recommend it for bread or anything, but recipes that are strong in flavor, like a brownie or a cake, you can just use Huel in place of flour in a 1-to-1 ratio. They have an unflavored, unsweetened Huel. And then you have nutritionally complete brownies that are dairy, soy, gluten-free, whatever else free you want. And yeah, so that's Huel. Highly recommend Huel if you're trying to figure out your food allergies, if you're sick of getting spiked, if you get migraines and you don't want to cook. Or the other thing I've been using it for now is breastfeeding. I have to get up in the middle of the night to feed the baby. And whenever I get up in the middle of the night to feed her, I also have a serving of Huel. Quick 400 calorie, very healthy, very complete meal that I can have to replenish myself while she is unplenishing me. And you also dissolve it in 17 ounces of water, so you're getting tons of water as well, which she's also draining from me. This is a weird thing to mention, but I'm going to mention it. The normal Huel bags are white and they have black letters on them. This one is the protein Huel, so it's 50% less carbs or something like that with more protein. So that's why it's the black bag. It's Huel Black. This is my favorite one, actually. This is the black vanilla. The black chocolate's pretty good, but I like the vanilla better. Do I think that I have all of my food allergies figured out? Not necessarily. I mean, honestly, I haven't done the full elimination of everything that's on my list of allergens. It's just really hard to do that kind of thing when you already get a lot of migraines and there's so many other things to keep track of in life. In addition, I've never actually done the Heal Your Headache diet or the migraine diet. You would think that would be one of the very first things that I try, but again, full plate. I don't know. I just haven't gotten to it. And last but not least, plans for the future. I don't really have any, or at least I don't have any that are super concrete. I know that I will definitely be doing other elimination diets in my future. It's something that I do. My diet kind of just ebbs and flows with the changing seasons and with how my body's feeling at the time, what my cravings are, which I take as deficiencies. If I'm craving something a lot, I assume that that's something that my body really needs. I anticipate I'm going to try going low carb again soon because I know that I feel really good on that, and I'm starting to feel kind of icky just in this postpartum funk. But I don't want to make any changes right now because I did just go through the pregnancy. I am breastfeeding, so I don't want to mix anything up too badly until my body is my own again. I apologize so much for this video being so choppy and jumpy. I truly had a lot of trouble filming this today with the baby, but hopefully I got everything out that you guys wanted to learn from me. Make sure you drop any questions that you have in the comments down below. And if you have any food allergies, food triggers, and how you found them, drop those down there too. As always, I hope that this helps someone, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining for another video, guys.